Your Town Matters is funded by the Government of Canada through the Local Journalism Initiative and supported by Cactus Media, Canada's independent community television association.
Welcome to Your Town Matters. I'm Natalie Sturgeon. My guest today is the mayor of the town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. Thanks for joining me today.
Always appreciate being here.
Well, you know, I'm sure people are keen to talk about the news that you unveiled earlier this week, but I've got a list of things that I want to talk to you about first.
Sure.
So we'll start with that and we'll save the best for last, so to speak. I want to talk about the courthouse. So I did write about this, but I wondered what you envision the courthouse where it might end up in the future.
So as you know, we went out for expressions of interest. It is an asset that is publicly owned, and I think whoever basically manages or takes over this courthouse is going to need some financial assistance to really help get it, I guess you could say, moving forward or repurposed. So really looking forward to looking at that expression of interest, obviously having a scoring matrix to make sure that everybody is treated equally, but I will be surprised, to be honest, and maybe it's not fair for me to say, I'll be surprised if there is another community group that puts in as dynamic of a proposal and another community group that has as much history as the Civic Trust does of preserving buildings. So, we'll go through that process. We'll see if Civic Trust is the successful, I guess you could say, partner. Then we'll have to sit down and have a discussion on what that looks like, what they need to be successful. I think it's important that we go under a couple of different lenses. Are we preserving this courthouse, its heritage value? Are we still using it as something that the community can enjoy and use? But also, are we setting this up for long-term success? Because not that Civic Trust would ever do this, but when you do transfer property, you do have I think a certain obligation to make sure that you're setting it up for long-term success, and a building of that significance has to be.
Well, and why is it important to keep it local in terms of whoever ends up owning it?
So I think it's important that when you have an asset like that and you have a local not-for-profit or charity that wants to use it, then we should. Now, if by chance they didn't come forward, I think that a conversation over maybe even private enterprise, it could have happened. It really could have. You could have looked at certain covenants that protected the heritage value of it. No different than if you look at the Niger Reef Tea House. The town used to own that. We partnered with basically the person that was running the restaurant out of it. They privately own that right now, and they have maintained the historic significance of that building. So you can work with private. So there is multiple options, and I will say that local investment is important. Outside investment is welcome, but I really do think with Civic Trust track record, I think we kind of owe it to them in the history of the courthouse to see what that looks like.
Right. There was some debate about what financial assistance might be required, and how do you see that piece of the puzzle fitting in? Maybe in the first couple of years, you said, helping them kind of get themselves on their feet and establish themselves there.
So a big part of their proposal, which was really interesting, is that they did definitely reference that there was a number of other financial means out there: grants, private donorship. Obviously they'll have the ability to issue tax receipts. There was a lot of financial component that they were confident that they could get investment into this courthouse, and for us it has been about making that courthouse operation as sustainable as possible. So the fact that they're willing to raise their hand and take a leadership position to say this isn't all on the taxpayer of the town of St. Andrews, we want to find other revenue sources, I think that was very important. But what it looks like with the municipality is we actually have a tourism accommodation levy that is for tourism. I do think when you have a heritage asset like this, there is a big tourism component to it. So in my mind, I don't know if it's a 3-year deal, a 5-year deal. I don't know what the financial amount will be. But you look at the lead paint that we talked about before, and how that's a significant cost. I don't think you could just say, here's the courthouse for $1, good luck raising every cent yourself. I think it really does have to be a partnership. And is it a 20-year partnership? No. But to get them set up for success, I think you do have to look at a 3 to 5 year partnership to say that we're not paying for everything, but you're going to need some startup capital. You're going to need even a percentage to go for other grants. You still have to pay some yourself. I think we have to be there for them. And the other interesting thing is when they take this over, and if they do, again, we might have another charity or not-for-profit come out of nowhere and have a really good proposal. But whoever does, the town of St. Andrews is paying that property tax bill right now. We don't have to pay it anymore. So that is money that was set in an annual budget that perhaps could be relocated over this to have some longer-term financial support. So
that's roughly $20,000.
It's significant. Yeah. It really is. And of course, the other part of it is the old jail will probably be part of that in the archives. So they are providing a service for all of Charlotte County, not just the courthouse, but with the archives. So, and not even getting into the green space in front of it, what that could be. But there's a lot of consultation that needs to be done for any plan with that neighborhood. But we're getting closer to having, I guess you could say, even more meaningful conversations.
And I'll ask for the public one more time. There's no possibility that you think it could return to a courthouse even a couple of days a week?
No, I don't think that the province right now is in a position where they're looking to take over buildings and open courthouses. I know they've got pressure in other parts of the province. I know that there's a group of judges, lawyers in the area that are pushing for this. I would love to see that be what actually happens. And if it does, I don't think the municipality should be paying for a courthouse when everywhere else across the province does. But in fairness, Civic Trust did say that that was the number one thing they heard. So even if it goes to Civic Trust, it doesn't mean that it can't be that. So, and if you look again at their history, they're going to make decisions that are good for the history of that building. And I think everyone can align that a courthouse, being a courthouse, makes sense.
Sticking with the development theme, council denied the encroachment agreement to the Argyle residents, which is a pretty significant development in the downtown. What to you were the top concerns about why they chose not to go with that encroachment? Yeah,
so it was a bit of a split vote. It wasn't unanimous by council, but really, when the actual developer came in, he did cite that it was an error made by the surveyors. And I think where a lot of the councillors kind of felt like, this is a private development, we haven't been part of it. And we can appreciate that errors happen, but the error shouldn't be the obligation of the taxpayer, the one that owns the land, to figure this out. There's ways that you can remedy that within the footprint that's there. And ultimately, that's the way that council leaned. The encroachment would have extended it out into the sidewalk further than any encroachment in the town of St. Andrews. And I think it was just too much of an ask for the council to fully support. And the other thing too is these building standards aren't new. Professionals should know that, that it should be accessible. And, are you setting precedents that the next person that comes up said, well, you gave them land. I don't want to lose any of my footprint, so can I stick mine out even further? Council just wasn't comfortable with it, and I think ultimately that's what did skew it. But I will say that there was a number of concerned residents all around that whole development. And the reality is if you're not part of it from day one, do you jump in halfway through and solve it? I don't know if council had an appetite to do that, but ultimately, there was varying opinion, and they're continuing to do work. There's no stop work order, so they must be working towards a solution within the footprint of the building.
Well, and it's a balancing act for council, trying to kind of enhance the downtown, but also maintain its cultural and historical significance. That was part of that debate, that conversation.
It was, yeah. And with that one, it's important to note that the developer originally went to town council, was looking for a number of different variances, and it wasn't granted. And I actually left being mayor and sat at the council table to enter debate. And what it keeps going back to me is a former mayor. He was a friend. He's passed away. Everyone knew Chris Fleming. Chris Fleming and I used to have lunch together when I was the deputy mayor, and one thing Chris said to me is, if a development needs several, not just one or two or three, needs several variances to what your zoning bylaws are or your municipal plan, then what that really tells you is it doesn't fit in with the plan of your community. And he was full of good advice, and that's one thing that stuck with me. So for this particular development, though, although there is some concern over the size and scope, it is done within the zoning bylaws of the town of St. Andrews. So we're just going through that process again because of municipal reform, zoning bylaw, municipal plan, and even the secondary municipal plan. It's important for people that have concerns to reach out to council and provide their input, because it's a really good time, if you have concerns about something like this, to, I guess you could say, scope the future of the community. But one thing's for sure, it's going to be a beautiful building. It's going to increase our, definitely our commercial space, the downtown, the space of it, and it's going to provide a home for a number of people. So there's a lot of benefits to this project as well. And even the people that are opposed to it see that as well. It's just, I guess, the scaling where a lot of the concern came from.
Right. You mentioned my next topic, municipal reform. So yesterday, late in the day, the government announced some funding, not for this year. And the Union of Municipalities says it kind of lacks detail and it falls short of what you all need right now, which is more funding to plan for the future. What were your thoughts about that announcement?
So I actually think it's a very, very positive announcement. We've been promised fiscal reform for a number of years, since municipal reform. And, you know, we got a whole bunch of new services that we have to pay for, and we're expected to pay it for property tax. But at least it's a government that's recognizing that we do have to give other revenue streams to municipalities. So let's take that as a very positive. Is it 100% of where municipalities need? No. But is it a start? Yes. So I take it as a positive. I guess my concern is, all right, so there's a lump sum of money. How does it get divided? And kind of some of the early talk that I've heard is they might look at the average assessment value of your home, of your community. So if you're a community that has higher assessment, you may not get as much support. I've heard that they're going to look at the average income in your community. And my only concern is when you look at that, St. Andrews may not get any or very little of this assistance, but I don't know that for a fact yet. So I'm looking really for the details. But I think that whether you have people in your community that have high income, whether you have high valued homes, there's people that don't have high income. There's people that don't even have a home. We need support in our communities as well. And we, St. Andrews, just like every other community, keep asking people to pay more and more and more for aging infrastructure. If the province is giving money out, tax dollars, I think all communities should benefit off that. I'm really hoping that St. Andrews will be part of that, but I just can't answer that today. Sometimes with equalization transfer payments, community-wide in the past, St. Andrews hasn't got much support as other municipalities. I know we've got a lot of infrastructure in place. There were gifts that were kind of given to the town, this arena being one of them, but it's older now, we're paying for it. We have a lot of infrastructure for such a small community, especially around tourism. We do need help. So I'm hoping this does translate to St. Andrews getting some additional financial support. Well,
and the timeline is 7 years, right? They're progressively going to get to 188 million by 2030, which is 7 years after municipal reform took place. But, you know, even Councillor Weir brought up infrastructure, but you're not alone in that. The gap is $2.5 billion in infrastructure, roads, streets, pipes, all those things. So, and do you think people understand that the property tax system is kind of a double-edged sword, in that if you raise it, you get more funding, so you can kind of do more things. If you lower it, you get less money. Do you think they have an understanding of how difficult that give and take is?
I think property tax is probably one of the more confusing taxes for people to understand, because there's two different levels of government at play. We don't set the assessment. The province sets the assessment. So when you get your assessment comes out, municipality has nothing to do with that. But we do ultimately have the ability to adjust the mill rate. And what you've seen in St. Andrews is we've actually decreased in the old ward, and even in Shamcook Bayside, the last actually time that we adjusted the mill rate, we lowered it, and it's because the province has upped your assessment. But the keeping your tax, your property tax, the same, it doesn't actually work for municipalities. And I know that that's a tough thing to say, but the cost of everything is through the roof. So if you're not upping your tax base, new construction, I think, is the best way to do that. But if you're not upping your tax base, then you're going to have to cut services. So it's a more complicated tax to say, well, who actually determines my assessment? Who determines my mill rate? The answer is both levels of government are involved. But for a municipality, it is the only revenue source. So if we want to have this beautiful community, and like you touched on, with infrastructure that really is aging quickly, there was a long time, it hasn't been until recent history, people used to put a pipe in the ground or build a road. Oh, we're done. Well, no. When it comes up for replacement, how are you going to afford that? And it's going to cost a lot more is what we're clearly seeing. So St. Andrews is no different than any other municipality. We are acknowledged as one of the best asset management plans. We have a very detailed one. But that detailed one is very concerning when you look at the future. And we could even get into talking about kind of water and wastewater. That one is something that needs to be figured out because if you look at what the cost of water is and the revenue that we bring in with our water bills, it's not sustainable unless there's a significant change.
Right. And you guys went to a consumption-based system to kind of ease the burden and potentially help you guys out down the road for better infrastructure.
Didn't ease the burden on my bill. I have three kids and a wife and a washing machine that never stops. My bill literally almost tripled.
Right.
But that's right. A senior citizen should be paying the same as me. But that is part of that, to your point, is it will be something that you'll have an opportunity to save by conserving water. And that makes a lot of sense. But for someone like me and someone like, if you have a bed and breakfast, your bill's going to go up. And I know a lot of people could argue that makes sense versus just someone living on their own shouldn't be paying the exact same as I should be. But we did have a consultant come in and say, this is what you need to get to. But also they weren't looking 10 years down the road at the cost of what it actually costs to put water. And we've got pipes that basically are costing $1 million to replace, and there's 5 to 7 homes on them. Like, your water bill will never pay for that. So how do we make it sustainable if all we're relying on is just straight up what we charge you? You'll never get your money back. So it's tough. It's tough, but we're not alone.
Yeah. And so I'm going to move now to council composition, which is fresh in my mind because St. Stephen also discussed it last night. Why reduce council?
So if you look at municipal council in St. Andrews, we have 9 councillors plus a mayor, 10 people with a population of 3,000, roughly about 1 representative for every 300. That is one of the, I guess you could say, highest councillor to population ratios in the province. And council does a lot of work, but it's more as a whole. And the other thing too is, if you look at the fact that you have 9 people around a table and everyone wants to talk 3 minutes, you got 30 minutes on a motion before you've even gone on. So I think if you look at a community of our size, 6 councillors plus a mayor, the proposal the staff did, it's got a lot of merit towards it. I think council kind of decided we're going to start this process, get some consultation. There will be a hearing of objections. I do think it makes a lot of sense. And it's important to note that the 9 changing it to 6 keeps that ratio in place of, population, Shamcook, Bayside joining the community, roughly about 50% of the size, 50% of the tax base, so they get about a third. St. Andrews gets 2/3. It all lines up in the ratio, so I think that's why that proposal made sense. And it is important to note, without all the other costs of council, just straight up salaries and UMB, it's a $42,000 savings for the municipality, which is money that we could put into infrastructure. So over to council what they decide, but to me 6+1, the proposal by basically staff, and I think that's something the province looked at and said, yeah, that makes sense. There's a lot of merit to it, so we'll see what happens.
During the debate last night, it came up that council has to separate who's in the seat when they're thinking about getting rid of someone, because you all work together and you all know each other, you live in the same community. How hard do you think it's going to be for council to decide to cut someone's seat when they think about maybe a Jamie Hurdle or Annette Harland or Mark Bennett? Like they see these people, right?
Well, I actually hope that people just completely separate that all together, because it's like what's best for the community. It's not what's best for who's around that table. And it's important to note that there will be a position that each and every one of them can run for. And if you do a really good job and you're active in your community and you speak out well for the people in your riding, you've got a good chance of being reelected. But I don't think worrying about who's around the table today and make sure everyone saves their seat, I don't think that that's going to be a priority for anyone, and I hope it isn't. I hope we're looking ahead to the future long term and not who's at the table. Right.
We're going to talk about your announcement on Tuesday morning. Why and when did you decide to do this?
To be honest, I kind of decided to do it in 2021 before I even ran. I talk about my wife and kids. Literally, it wasn't so much Lou because he was he was taught I couldn't speak. But we had a conversation, and it's a significant commitment from the family, and we said, mayor is something that we all supported and wanted me to try to do. But we did say right then that it was the last 4 years. So basically, I knew from early in this term, I was pretty open about it, that this is my last term. And then all of a sudden, municipal reform happened. There was very little consultation, but there was absolutely none about extending anyone's terms. I had done it before around a global pandemic. I was deputy mayor for roughly 5 years. That made sense, right? People couldn't vote. This one was phasing by the provincial government with no consultation. And Christine and the kids, they would have supported me if I said I'm doing another year. But I do feel like when I had conversations with people leading up to the election, I am pretty proud to say that I did what I said I was going to do. And if there's anyone I gotta really do what I say I'm gonna do, it's to my wife and kids. And I would consider myself very active in my kids' lives. They get a hockey schedule or a soccer schedule. I put it in my calendar and I work around meetings. I'm not always there, but I'm there a lot. But where I consider myself a good father, but where I feel like I can improve as a father is if one of my kids say, Dad, can we go kick a soccer ball or throw a baseball impromptu? Sorry, buddy, I can't. I got a meeting. I say that a lot. And these years are going very, very quick, and I'm trying not to get emotional as I talk about it. Like even my oldest, he's 13, Hunter. I got 5 years left before he's in my house. Like another year's 20% of my time with him before he leaves. And my family would support it, but I don't feel comfortable asking them to sacrifice anymore. I want to be home. They want me to be home. And although it's bittersweet because I love being mayor and I love being active in the community, which I still can help the community, it's a really easy decision when your kids want you home more. And I'm really, really excited for this chapter. And we just talked about it. We got 9 other counselors around that table that all care about the community and are perfectly capable of guiding this community and making good decisions. It really came down for me as a no-brainer. And June, why I picked that date, it's 4 years to the day of when I swore in. So I honored my 4 years. It's only 10 months to the next election, and I'm just a phone call away up the hill. I'm 4 blocks from Town Hall, where I work as my day job. I can come down the hill and help anytime they need. I'm here. I always want to be a supporter of the town. I always want to be a supporter of town council. Not to say I will always agree with what they do. Now I can actually talk about when I don't agree. Can't do it really today. I got to support everything. It's exciting for me, and I just want to say thank you to CHCO. Communication is an important thing of what you do as a mayor, being transparent and answering tough questions. Sometimes you like to talk about things that are happening in the community. Sometimes it's not as easy, but CHCO, from being in the meetings to having opportunities like this, you've definitely made it easier for me to communicate with the public. And some of the feedback I got was that I was successful at communication. That is just as much a tilt to the hat of CHCO because you're such a big part, in addition to things like social media I do and stuff like that. You're such an important part of kind of my journey as mayor and even deputy mayor. I was here quite a bit. So thank you.
Well, we love to have you back, and Vicky's already made you promise you'll come back for Santa's Helpers. I did listen to your interviews with some of the other media, doing my research, kind of listening to what you had to say, and I wondered what the rationale was maybe behind not resigning in February to allow a by-election to happen, which is a fixed election date.
So first of all, I wouldn't have honored my 4 years to the community. The second thing is we have 9 councillors plus a mayor. There's still a lot of people. Kate Akagi has been on council longer than I have been. Kate Akagi wants this opportunity, and I think it's important for the community to give her the 10 months to kind of live on. I'm not going to say it's her dream, but she's been very involved with it. She ran for mayor before. I think it's really important. And then you've got a bunch of councillors around. I went from, after 5 years, after 4, I felt like I was ready to step up to be mayor. There's other leaders around that table. I think you'll probably see 1, maybe 2 run for mayor. So I'm not really worried about who's not at the table. And the other thing is we're going through municipal reform right now. I don't want to disrupt council in the sense we're bringing other people that may have other intentions on it. So I think for me, it made sense. And 9 people now, all of a sudden, whoever's acting mayor, which is Kate in this case, she actually can vote in the case of a tie, right? So to step back and I would have had to make the announcement in December, I would have left almost closer to 3 years then, right? So it didn't really make sense for me. And The other thing too is this extra year, it's not necessarily something that I did. It's something that the province decided to do. The previous government decided this is what they want. So yeah, that's pretty much why is there's enough people around that table, and I wanted to do my entire 4 years.
And you'll be back for another year, Town Matters, before June. But anything you want to say to the community, you know, as you kind of set to depart from more public life? There's
a lot I want to say to the community, but really it comes down to thank you. Like, if the community voted, they entrusted me to be their mayor, and even Shamcook Bayside, who wasn't part of that general election, the amount of kindness and the amount of good days I've had as mayor has far outweighed my bad days. And I know there's a lot of reasons why people don't raise their hand for office, and there's been times where I've even questioned, why do I do this, some more days than others. The reality is this has been a wonderful experience. I'm so proud of everything this community, not myself, this community has accomplished over the last 9 years. And I've said it before, you know, there is a lot of things that St. Andrews we need to work on, we need to improve. But if you look around, all around Canada, we're pretty blessed to be able to call this our community. And yeah, I'm just grateful, and I hope at the end of the day, and based on social media response, that people realize that how much I appreciate this town and how much I do care about it and want it to be successful. And again, I don't plan to stop trying to assist this community. I talked to Caroline Davies today. She's always going for this community. She's not the mayor. There's a lot of ways that you can make this community better by just getting involved.
Well, thanks for always being willing to have the conversation.
Thanks a lot.
My guest today was the mayor of the town of St. Andrews, Brad Henderson. I'm Natalie Sturgeon, and thanks for watching Your Town Matters.